This is Poppy and Rye Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is called A Dance Upon the Meadow. Poppy and Erith continued traveling west. Though there were many trails from which to choose, there were no clear signs to follow. The best that Poppy could do was keep them moving in a westerly direction. For Erith, it was a point of pride to refuse to ask directions from anyone. But why? Poppy wanted to know. Ask for directions and you're admitting you're helpless, the porcupine pronounced. The only thing that matters is that I know my way back home. When they didn't meet other mice or voles, a badger, once a deer and a fawn, it was Poppy who had asked for advice. We're looking for the brook, she would say. Do you have any idea where that might be? The other animals were more than obliging. When these fellow travelers knew where the brook was, they explained how to reach it. Poppy and Erith did find them. One or two large brooks, some 3 or 4 smaller size, but no golden mice was to be found. Erith, Poppy finally said, we don't seem to be getting any closer to where Ragweed and his family lived. Do you think he might have been confused about which way he came? Probably, Erith grumbled. I admit, Poppy confessed, I'm beginning to wonder how much longer we should go on. Erith came to a stop. Fine, he said. Let's go home. The anxiety in his voice caused Poppy to consider him thoughtfully. You've been awfully quiet lately, she said. Is something bothering you? Oh, sparrow spit, Erith said. Can't a fellow keep his thoughts to himself? Of course he can. Look here, Poppy, the porcupine said. I'm not used to being with others. How many times do I have to say it? I like being alone. That's fine, the mouse returned. I'm just wondering. Well, stop wondering, Fuzzball. But the forest does seem to be thinning, Poppy pointed out. Maybe we're closer to the woodlands. Either looked about. I prefer the dark, he said. Poppy sighed. I'm going on a bit more. Do what you want, Erith growled. By midday, the trees thinning more and more and the sun beating down hard, it became too hot to travel. Erith announced he needed a nap. Without even waiting for Poppy to reply, he rattled off the trail, found a shady spot in a tree, curled up in a ball, and went to sleep. Poppy rolled over on her stomach, plucked a blade of grass, and chewed on it meditatively. Before he spread a small meadow, surrounded on 3 sides by trees that had closed in, a secure feeling. The grasses were low, sprinkled with flowers. She noticed a yellow violet, forget-me-nots, and bluebells. There was a scarlet false swallow and some lovely lush poppies. A black and orange butterfly came into view, fluttering its wings like a slow-motion dancer. Soon after, a fat bumblebee, legs bulky with golden pollen, worked its way from flower to flower. A fast dancer, Poppy thought. As Poppy looked on, something stirred within her. To her surprise, she felt lonely and empty, yet full of contentment all at once. How, she wondered, could she feel such contradictions? Then, as she watched a dragonfly dart by, she recalled that it had been a long time since she had danced. When she was young, a few months ago, she had thought a great deal about dancing. She even wanted to be a dancer. Sighing, she recollected that she could never and had never danced with Ragweed. They had meant to, and now she felt the desire to dance again. With a nervous glance up at Erith to make sure he was still sleeping, she got to her feet. Poppy checked a second time to make sure her friend was asleep. She was in no mood to deal with the porcupine's teasing. When he didn't stir, she lifted a front paw as if to pluck the sun from the sky. Her tail began to wave at a steady beat. A miniature melody, halfway between a whistle and a hum, rose in her throat. It was no particular tune, just something she had made up right then and there. She took one step and another, gliding forward, pretending, waiting to be as graceful as possible. With every step, her heart seemed to lighten. Within moments, Poppy was leaping about, skimming the surface of the fields, bending and bowing, twirling and whirling, hardly thinking, aware of most of the sun's warmth that caressed her fur, the cool grasses that tickled her toes. Oh, how she loved to dance. Oh, how she loved life. Almost overwhelmed with emotion, Poppy closed her eyes, spun, dipped, and danced some more. Then she opened her eyes. Standing before her was a mouse. Poppy gasped. For an indescribable moment, she thought about ragweed. The mouse before her had the same orange-colored fur. His whiskers were fair, his tails were not very long, his ears were small and round. She almost cried, "Ragweed?" But she couldn't find the tongue to do it. Then she noticed a small notch on the mouse's right ear. This was not ragweed. Even so, she stood there, transfixed, staring, heart pounding as fast as hummingbird wings. For this part, the strange mouse stood absolutely still, gazing at Poppy as if in rhapsody. When Poppy had opened her eyes, she had been in the midst of a twirl, arms and paws extended before her, legs behind. As she gawked at the mouse before her, she dared not move. Now the strange mouse extended his paws. Without a word, he gently took Poppy's paws in his. As his touch felt, a tingle rippled through her body. It was as if a feather had stroked her from tail to nose. For a moment that felt like an eternity, the two mice looked at each other's eyes. He whispered, "May I dance with you?" In answer, Poppy made the first move. It was not a movement away or a retreat, but a small step to one side. Her paw and his, the two mice moved in perfect rhythm. Round and round, paw and paw, they danced upon the meadow. Eyes locked, whiskers sometimes brushing, they turned this way, that way, bobbing, borrowing, soaring in a graceful duet that the two mice danced. They could dance and would dance. How much Poppy wanted to ask, "Who are you? What are you? Where did you come from?" She could not. She only knew one thing that was happening. Indeed, it was just the opposite. Something very fine was occurring, something grand and something wonderful. Suddenly, Poppy slipped. Her paws jerked away from the stranger's paws, and she fell back. The two mice continued to stare at each other. The other mouse blushed, turned, and then fled towards the west, disappearing amid the trees that surrounded the field. The speechless Poppy stared after him. Even as the questions returned, "Who are you? What are you? Where do you come from? Where are you going?" But the other mouse was gone, and Poppy had no answers. Overwhelmed, Poppy picked herself up from the ground. Half walking, half staggering, she made her way back to where Erith had remained asleep. At the base of the tree, she sat down and closed her eyes. Had it all been a dream, or had something truly extraordinary occurred? She wasn't sure. The next thing Poppy felt was her shoulder being rudely shaken. Simultaneously, she heard Erith sputter into her ear, "Let's go, Stinkfoot! The sooner we get where we're going, the sooner we can go back home." But what had happened to Rye? For it was Rye whom Poppy had danced. He had gone from the meadow in a stupor equal to Poppy's. As he went, he paused now and again to look back longingly. "Who are you? What are you?" He asked at the image of Poppy. "What's your name? Where do you come from? Where will you go?" And why did he feel that way he had to go away, whenever the fact he wanted to go back and dance forever? Rye also asked himself if the dance had been real or only a moment's fantasy. So intent he was upon these questions that he completely forgot he was running away from home. When he did remember, he had already reached the entryway to his family nest in the boulder. "Oh well," Rye said dreamily, "I might as well stay." No one had even noticed he had gone.